back to Reclaiming the Mic with Bella,
Nessa,
and Isabel.
and today we'll be talking about the gender wage gap.
So the gender wage gap dates all the way back to the 1860s when equal pay movements were started by women across the country. After, in the 1930s, post-World War II, while many women were young and unmarried, they were put to tasks that, according to the Census Bureau, were not considered laborious. So this includes housekeeping, cooking, childcare, etc. Later in the 1960s, women worked in the industrial sector, but there were many legal restrictions and policies against them working in higher paying environments. So that's when the Equal Pay Act of 1963 was signed by John F. Kennedy in order to not discriminate based on gender when regarding like pay and stuff. So this was honestly a really big movement in starting that revolution towards like equality, and especially for younger women who would work nearly like 12 hours every single day just to provide for their families and get those resources that they need.
Yeah, that's crazy. I totally agree with that, because even now you can see the effects that it's had, and the fact that we're starting to overcome it, but it's still not quite there yet. It definitely shows where the country's priorities are, and it's like, it definitely shows that people like are still questioning like women's ability to work and how well they can do their job, even though like a lot of women, like there's many cases where women are actually better than their job at men, or like just as good as men, but still get discriminated against based on their gender, which doesn't really make sense to me.
right? And even though it's been like 60-ish years since this movement has started, we honestly haven't seen like much of a growth, to be honest. Like in Louisiana, for instance, the wage gap, women make 71% of what men make, and the smallest wage gap, at least in the United States, is 89% in Rhode Island, which is still not 100%, which is what it should be, especially after all the years of fighting and all the movements and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy that like we still haven't gotten to an equal pay just based off the gender that you are.
Yeah, and also especially since the stigma against working women kind of decreased after World War II, many movements were started, like for example, we called the other week the American Association of University Women, or the AAUW. They're a nonprofit organization that continuously fought for more equality in the workplace. It started around the 1970s when more laws were beginning to be passed, and ultimately it led to the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 and also the Paycheck Fairness Act in 2009. So these policies were really important to kind of like reassure women and give them hope and tell them that there is change, and especially since like so many women were fighting for that for so long. So it was really cool to see like the progression, but even now it's still not enough.
Yeah, and this may not be like 100% like correct, but I was talking to my mom about it, and she said that the Pay Gap Fairness Act or whatever, she was like, that's like only relevant with public jobs.
Is it really?
But yeah, I'm pretty sure. But private businesses are able to pay employees whatever they want. So like
yeah, so even then, like it's almost like we'll give you guys somewhat of an advantage, but not enough so that possibly a woman can be more successful, or a woman would make more. And I think I remember saying, Bella, you said sometimes that women, the wage gap increases as women get older.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why that is, but as like if a woman starts with say they were working in the same job as a man, and their wage gap was like they were making 80% of what their male coworker made. As they age, that wage gap increases to like, say, as they start out when they're like 20, but now they're 35 working the same job.
Yeah.
The wage gap just increases as they get older, which
Yeah, it's crazy to think
It's
about,
like-
'cause you wouldn't think that that would be the truth. You would
Exactly.
think that it would decrease maybe because of the longevity of their work, but
yeah,
Right.
and the experience that they've gained from working.
exactly.
Right.
But-
And to like put it into perspective over like a long term, if a 20-year-old woman just started working full time at the same time as a man, in 40 years that man would have ended up making $407,000 more than her just based off the wage gap. Obviously, depending on what state you live in, but like averages to about 407,000.
Yeah, and I think that's crazy because it also has a lot to do with like promotions too, because a woman can ask their job or their boss for like a raise, obviously because they've been performing well and they've been in their job for like X amount of years, so they have the experience. But a lot of times in those cases, their bosses or whoever's in charge of promoting them to a higher position or something like that, they'll just put it off until like eventually it just like simmers out and they'll forget about it. But in a lot of cases, they'll just give that promotion to a man instead. And I've seen that happen. It's happened with my mom, it's happened with other women in my life that I know. And I think that's just, it comes down to like the person themselves, like their opinions and stuff, but I feel like it's also like, I feel like people have been kind of like groomed
Yeah.
basically to like think of like men as being better than women.
Yeah.
And sorry, but there was just this one thing that I remember researching, and it said that like men, when they get like hired in a job, it's like they are automatically like, they think that like their woman, their female coworker is in a lower position than them. So like, say a male just got hired in this job and they didn't know that this female was the boss of their boss. If they see them just walking around the office, it's more common for that man to automatically think that that female coworker is in a lower position than them, just based off of stereotypes that they've been
Yeah.
like accustomed to.
Yeah, and that's crazy too, because it's not just one single person that's causing all of this. It's not just one single group, but it's more of like society in general, and kind of over time the stigma, I guess it decreases, but also there are many instances where women are made to feel like when they start a job, they are already less than the man. They are already below their male coworkers, and they can't ever, you know, become more successful than them. So it's really interesting that you said that, Bella.
Right. And also going back a little bit to like the promotion talk, it's also like frowned upon, I'd say, to discuss your wage within a workplace.
Yeah.
So you could, as a woman, you could be making significantly less than your male coworker and have no clue, or like be afraid to ask even, because it is definitely frowned upon and it is like seen as weird to discuss wages between coworkers. And then even if you did know your coworker, your male coworker was making more than you, like that's a tough conversation to bring up to your boss or like the higher ups, because like
Yeah.
it's just so frowned upon. And asking for a raise in the first place is
right.
like a difficult conversation to have. So
Yeah.
especially when like you're a woman, knowing that you're purposely, like the boss is purposely giving you less than the man, that makes it a lot more difficult to try to see common ground and make the same amount.
Yeah, and I feel like this problem is definitely bigger than just like gender too. It definitely has something to do with like race as well.
Yeah. Statistics show that Latino women face the largest gender racial wage gap being paid just 59.2 cents to every dollar that a white man makes, and black women earn 65.8 cents to every dollar a white man makes, which is absolutely insane. Like, just
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, it's crazy too, because it's like, it definitely is obvious because this information is, not difficult to find, but somehow, people just don't want to talk about it.
Right, like I found most of my information on government websites,
Yeah.
which is pretty
Kind of contradicting.
Yeah,
'cause it's like,
exactly.
Yeah. And there's still people that want to deny it.
yeah.
right.
Lots of people deny it.
Yeah.
Because men actually work more than women do.
Maybe let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, okay, also people denying it has like everything to do with how you're raised too. Cause like, if you grow up in a household where maybe your family is more, I guess, like in quotations, traditional, from like when the mom would stay and like take care of the kids and like the dad would go and like work, it also, your opinion on the wage gap is also heavily influenced by that, because you're trained into thinking that women don't need to make as much as men.
Exactly.
Because people that you knew didn't make as much as
Right.
men.
Yeah, so definitely like values and I guess like the culture of it all too also plays a important factor in that.
Right.
But yeah, it's not necessarily like, it's definitely a contradictory topic to talk about, because the amount of it's just it's such a big country, and you can't get every single woman to think the same thing.
Right, and it's also like a very broad topic. Like
Yeah.
obviously not all places have this exact gender wage gap, but
Right.
it is some, and that's like the problem. Like I
Yeah.
don't think that we should even be here talking about a gender wage gap being a thing.
Yeah, like half the population doesn't get paid equally. I just think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed more often.
Yeah, and here's some things that people around our school have said about it.
A statistic in 2022 showed that women made 83 cents for every dollar that men made in the U.S. Do you think that this has a significant impact on society?
I do, very much. It's an interesting statistic in my world because as far as teaching goes, the salary is the same regardless of your gender, at least in our school and in our state for sure. But I know that there are lots of careers that other women that I know have where they're earning less, and what is difficult for me is that and I say we as in people in our country have spent decades trying to fight this battle and get the wage gap decreased, and it has, but not enough to make it equal. And women are in the workforce probably just as much as men are and deserve to be paid the same amount, and it impacts their lives and their families' lives when they're not paid the same amount as a man doing the same job as they are.
Thank you so much for your input. So what are your guys' thoughts?
I think that women should get paid as much as men if they have the same skills and do the same job.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it just shows like where a lot of people's like priorities are. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what are your thoughts?
I think that this greatly impacts society because if women are working just as hard as men, if not even harder, they should be paid the same.
Yup. Okay, so what do you think?
I guess I would assert that, our country has had a lot of inequity in terms of gender related to the professional workplace. I know those numbers are an improvement from where they used to be, but I think until men and women are both compensated equally for the work that they do, I think it will continue. It will always have a negative impact on our society, because what you're essentially saying in the workplace is that half of the population is not worth what the other half is worth. And I just don't think that's a very good foundation on which to build a country and a society.
Okay, thank you. Well, we hope that these interviews formulated some sort of an opinion about this issue. Thank you so much for listening to Reclaiming the Mic with Isabel,
Bella.
And Nessa.
Bye.
Bye.